Emily and Jack were a couple who seemed happy on the outside. Their friends admired their harmony, and their family believed that the two were the perfect complement to each other. But the reality was different. After 3 years of marriage, Emily felt that her love for Jack began to fade. One night, Jack suddenly decided to sleep in the other room. Why? Asked Emily, but she received only silence. Instead of explaining, Jack, as usual, insisted that she drink a glass of water with honey before bed. Emily felt a stab of pain. In these 3 years, he had never remembered that she was seriously allergic to honey. This situation was the last straw. That night, Emily realized that she could no longer continue a relationship in which her love was not appreciated. The next morning, after packing her suitcase, Emily went to Jack's office. She didn't plan to have a long explanation. She just wanted to say that their marriage was over. When she met Jack, she confidently announced her decision. To her surprise, Jack did not argue. It seemed as if he was even waiting for this moment. Emily was stunned. She had hoped for some kind of reaction, at least a question of why. But he just nodded dryly and went back to his business. After the divorce, Jack started drinking. His career as a pilot was in jeopardy, and Emily, having learned about it, could not stand by. She returned to him, but not out of love, but out of pity. To keep her by his side, Jack offered a deal. They would stay together for another 3 years, and in return Emily would receive $2 million. She agreed, but not because of the money. Deep down, Emily still believed that she could bring their relationship back to a level where they were both happy. These 3 years were a test. Emily supported Jack, prayed for his safety during the flights, and even decided to become a flight attendant to be closer to him. She thought that working together would help them find a common language. But one day, after a long flight, Jack didn't come back alone. Lauren, his first love since high school, was with him. For Emily, it was like a knife in the heart. Their marriage was secret, so no one at work even suspected that Emily and Jack were married. She was forced to watch Jack and Lauren spend time together. Colleagues joked that they were the perfect couple. Emily felt her heart was breaking. She decided to file for divorce, but at that moment she found out she was pregnant. After telling Jack about the pregnancy, Emily offered a compromise: either they raise the child together, postponing the divorce, or he pays her $1 million so she can raise the child alone. But Emily's plans fell apart when she learned that Jack was planning to marry Lauren. This broke her. She decided to find a new man who could become the father of her child. Emily started dating. She told men openly about her pregnancy, but was rejected every time. None of them wanted to take responsibility. Feeling desperate, Emily took a radical step. She offered one man $1 million to become a father to her child. To her surprise, he agreed, but later admitted that it was not the offer that attracted him, but Emily herself. This man helped Emily find faith in herself. For the first time in a long time, she felt loved and needed. Their path to happiness was not easy, but Emily knew one thing: she would never again allow herself to be with someone who did not appreciate her. And although the story was not yet over, Emily believed that a happy future awaited her for her and her child. Emily finally felt some peace in her life. The man she met after her divorce from Jack turned out to be much better than she could have hoped for. He was caring, attentive, and understood her at a glance. His name was Nick, and although their relationship began under unusual circumstances, they quickly developed a real intimacy. Nick not only accepted her pregnancy, but also began to prepare for the role of a father. They attended parenting classes together, chose a name for the baby, and set up the nursery. For the first time in years, Emily felt happy. But life did not give her final peace. One day, after another flight, Emily met Lauren in the airport corridor. They both worked for the same airline, and it was getting harder and harder to avoid meeting. "Emily, we need to talk," Lauren said, stopping her. Emily didn't want to have this conversation, but Lauren insisted. In the conversation, she admitted that she knew about Emily and Jack's marriage. It turned out that Jack had told her the truth before he proposed to her. "He still thinks about you," Lauren said, "but we both know it's only because of the baby." Those words were like a blow. Emily didn't know whether to believe it, but inside, her feelings were stirring again. One evening, Jack suddenly appeared on her doorstep. He looked exhausted but composed. "I made a mistake," he said when they sat down to talk. "I didn't realize what I had lost until it was too late." Emily listened to him in silence. Jack begged her to come back, convincing her that everything would be different now. He was even ready to end his relationship with Lauren. But Emily had already changed. She was no longer the woman who lived in her husband's shadow, waiting for his attention. "Jack, I'm not yours anymore," she said firmly. "You've had 3 years to change. I have Nick now, and I will never allow myself to go back to the past again." After that conversation, Emily realized that she had truly closed that chapter of her life. She decided to build a future with Nick. A few months later, they had a son, whom they named Oliver. Nick became a real father to Oliver, and Emily finally received the support she had always lacked. Their family became an example of how happiness can be found even after difficult trials. Jack, in turn, realized what he had lost. He continued to work as a pilot, but now seemed more distant. His marriage to Lauren broke up after a few months, and he was left alone. Emily never looked back. She was grateful for all the lessons that fate had taught her and that these hardships had helped her become stronger. Together with Nick, they dreamed of the future. They planned to move to a quiet town and thought about having another child. Her story is proof that true happiness is only possible when you respect and value yourself. Sometimes you have to go through pain to find your happiness, but it's worth it. Emily's life seemed to be finally in order. Together with Nick, they created a harmonious family, where love and mutual respect reigned supreme. Oliver grew up a cheerful and inquisitive child, and his sincere laughter filled the house with warmth every day. Emily continued to work as a flight attendant, but now her flights were less frequent. She wanted to spend more time with her family. However, sometimes the shadow of the past reminded her of herself again. Jack stayed with the same airline, and although he and Emily no longer had direct contact, she heard from time to time from her colleagues. It was said that after his breakup with Lauren, he began doing charity work, working with young pilots and supporting aviation schools. One day Emily received a letter. It was from Jack. In it, he invited her, Nick and Oliver to the opening of a training center for pilots that he had set up at his own expense. "What do you think?" Nick asked, seeing the doubt in her eyes. Emily hesitated. She knew that this could be an awkward moment, but she also realized that this was a chance to finally close the past. "Let's go," she finally decided. At the opening ceremony, Emily saw Jack for the first time in several years. He had changed, his eyes were deeper and his face was more serious. He looked calm, but there was something in his eyes that reminded her of the pain of loss. "Emily, it's good to see you," he said as he walked over. "Hi, Jack," she smiled. "This is Nick and our son Oliver." Jack stopped for a moment, looking at the boy. Then his face lit up with a warm smile. "He's a good boy. You are raising him well." This meeting was a decisive moment for Emily. She realized that Jack had indeed changed, but they had both become different people, and their paths had now parted forever. After that meeting, Emily no longer had any doubts. She was right where she wanted to be, with a man who truly loved her and a son who became the center of her universe. Later, she and Nick decided to open their own business, a small hotel in the mountains. Their new life was full of adventures, but now these adventures brought only joy. Emily was no longer afraid of the future. She knew she had everything she needed: love, support, and family. And no matter what happened next, she was ready to go forward with her head held high. A few years passed. Emily and Nick developed their hotel business. Their small hotel in the mountains became popular with tourists who appreciated the coziness and family atmosphere. Oliver grew up to be a smart and clever boy, always finding adventure in even the most mundane things. One day, Emily received an unexpected call from an old friend at the airline. It was a request for help. Jack had had a serious accident during an emergency landing. His plane had collided with a flock of birds, and although he managed to save the lives of the passengers, he was seriously injured. "I don't know why I'm calling you," the friend said, "but he mentioned you." Emily had mixed emotions. She didn't want to go back to the past, but she also knew she couldn't ignore it. After talking to Nick, she decided to go to the hospital. Jack was lying in a room surrounded by machines. He looked exhausted, but when he saw Emily, his face lit up with a faint smile. "I knew you would come," he said. "I'm here to make sure you're okay," she replied, sitting down next to him. Jack explained how the incident made him rethink his life. He admitted that he still regrets the loss of Emily, but realizes that the past cannot be brought back. "I just want to apologize for not appreciating you when I had the chance," he said. Emily felt strangely calm. She knew that accepting this apology was the last step to freeing herself from any residual pain. "I forgive you, Jack. But now we both have to go our separate ways." After this meeting, Emily returned to her family with a sense of relief. She told Nick what had happened, and he supported her. "You did the right thing," he said as he hugged her. "We're building our future, and I'm glad you were finally able to close this chapter." Their lives returned to their normal rhythm. They continued to grow their business, travel with Oliver, and make plans for the future. A year after the incident, Emily received a letter. It was an official request from a charitable organization that Jack supported. He had donated a significant portion of his estate to create scholarships for future pilots, and he named one of the scholarships in Emily's honor as a show of respect for her and her support in the past. This gesture finally proved that their past had been transformed into something positive. Emily felt that she could now look to the future with an open mind, without looking back. Emily and Nick, along with little Oliver, went on to live their happy lives. Their story has become an example of how even the most painful breakups can be overcome and true happiness can be found. The past left a mark, but it was no longer a burden. It became a part of their story, which helped them become stronger, wiser, and ready for any challenge. And every time she looked at her son, Emily knew that all the hardships were worth it, because they had brought her to this moment to true, unconditional happiness. Over time, Emily and Nick decided to expand their business. The number of visitors grew, and they opened a second hotel on the ocean. It was not an easy decision, as they loved the mountains, but Nick convinced Emily that change is always a new opportunity. Oliver, who was 5 years old, was delighted with the idea of living by the sea. Every morning he woke his parents up and dragged them to the beach to build sand castles. Emily was happy that their lives had become so full and varied. One day, during the opening of a new hotel, a delegation from the airline Emily had once worked with visited them. They invited her to return to work, not as a flight attendant, but as a trainer for new employees. It was an interesting offer, and Emily thought about it seriously. She knew that her experience could be useful to others, and she had always enjoyed teaching young people. "You should do it if you want to," Nick said when she shared her doubts, "but only if it makes you happy." Emily accepted the offer. Now she spent a few days a week at the training center and the rest of the time devoted to her family and business. It was the perfect balance between the past and the future. Oliver grew up and became more and more interested in airplanes. He could spend hours listening to his mom talk about her work or watching airplanes fly over the ocean. One day, when they were at the airport, he suddenly asked, "Mom, do you want me to become a pilot?" Emily smiled. "I want you to become whatever you want to be. But if it is a pilot, I will be proud." Nick supported this conversation. "Oliver, you can be anything you want to be. The only thing that matters is that you love what you do." News of Jack reached Emily from time to time. He continued his charitable work and became one of the most famous instructors in the world. His books about aviation sold millions of copies, and his name became a symbol of courage and dedication to the profession. Emily felt proud of him, even though their paths had diverged. She realized that their connection, though painful, helped them both find themselves. A few years later, their business reached an international level. They opened another hotel in Europe, and it became another adventure for their family. Emily, Nick, and Oliver traveled the world, spending time together and supporting each other. They knew that happiness is not just financial success or material achievements, but love, trust, and shared moments that last forever. And every time they watched the sunset together, Emily felt that she was in her place. The past no longer bothered her, and the future was bright and full of possibilities. And so they lived with love, dreams, and the confidence that the best was yet to come. Oliver was growing up, and his dream of becoming a pilot was getting stronger and stronger. Emily and Nick supported their son in everything, helping him develop his interest in aviation. Oliver read books about aviation, played flight simulators, and even started taking lessons at a local flight school. One day, returning from class, he told his mother, "Mom, I want to go to the school that Jack founded." Emily froze for a moment. Jack's school was famous, but it would mean going back to memories she had left behind. But she quickly composed herself. "If that's what you want, we'll support you," she said. A few months later, Oliver enrolled in Jack's school. During the first day of classes, he and Jack finally met. Jack was now a gray-haired, but still confident man. He saw Emily and Oliver, and his eyes filled with emotion for a moment. "Emily, I never thought I would see you here," he said. Oliver decided to learn from the best, she replied with a slight smile. Jack realized that he was looking at a son who represented a new beginning for both of them. He pledged to give Oliver the best education possible, and his promise was sincere. It was a difficult time for Emily. She was returning to the place where it all began, but now it was for her son. She spent time with Nick discussing how they could best support Oliver without interfering with his decisions. "We have to trust him," Nick said, "he knows what he wants." Emily once again felt that life had given her a chance to see their son realize his dreams, and this became a new source of inspiration for her. Jack became a mentor to Oliver. He shared his knowledge and experience with him, and they developed a special friendship. Oliver did not know all the details of the past, but he saw Jack not just as a teacher, but as a person who understood his dreams. One day, after class, Oliver asked, "Did you know my mom?" Jack answered honestly, "Yes, your mother and I were part of the same life for many years. But the most important thing is that she helped me become who I am today." These words left a deep impression on Oliver's heart. Oliver graduated with honors. At his graduation ceremony, Jack, Nick, and Emily stood together, watching him receive his first pilot's license. It was a symbol of unity that transcended the pain of the past. Emily felt that life had brought her back to harmony again. Oliver had realized his dream, and she and Nick continued to build their happy future. A few years later, Oliver started working as a pilot and dreamed of one day flying an airplane with his parents on board. Emily and Nick looked at him with pride, knowing that every obstacle, every difficulty, and every sacrifice was worth it. It was a new beginning for their family, where love, respect, and mutual understanding became the foundation for everything. Life has shown that even from the most difficult path, you can find the way to the light. One morning, Emily and Nick received an unexpected call from Oliver. He happily announced that he had been appointed captain of a new airliner, and the first flight he was to take as commander would be from the city where his parents lived. "You guys have to be on board," Oliver said, his voice full of excitement. "It's going to be the most important flight of my life, and I want to share it with you." Emily and Nick were thrilled. This event was a symbol of how far they had all come together. The day of the flight came. Emily and Nick walked on board with pride. They were greeted by the crew, who welcomed them as the captain's special guests. The atmosphere was full of warmth and joy. Before departure, Oliver announced over the loudspeaker, "Good afternoon, dear passengers. This is your captain, Oliver Ryan. I am pleased to welcome you aboard this flight, which is very special to me. Today I am traveling with the people who are my inspiration and support, my mother Emily and my father Nick." This moment sparked applause in the cabin, and Emily felt tears of pride welling up in her eyes. After landing, they were greeted by a crowd of journalists and friends. Jack was among them. He decided to fly over to congratulate Oliver on his achievement. "Your son has exceeded all my expectations," Jack told Emily, shaking Nick's hand. It was a short but warm meeting that finally showed that the past was behind them and all the old wounds had healed. That evening, the whole family gathered at home to celebrate. Oliver talked about his plans for the future, and Emily and Nick listened attentively, enjoying every moment. "Mom, Dad, I've always dreamed of achieving what you've done for me," Oliver said. "You've shown me that true strength comes from love, support and faith." These words touched Emily and Nick to the core. They realized that their efforts were not in vain. Oliver continued his journey in the world of aviation, becoming one of the youngest captains in his airline. Emily and Nick supported him in everything, while continuing to grow their business and travel the world. Life went on, but now it was full of harmony, gratitude, and true happiness. And every time they looked at the sunset, whether in the mountains, by the ocean, or even on board an airplane, they knew that this was their story, filled with love that they had carried through all the trials. This is how they continued to live, build their future, and remember that the true strength of a family is support and love that never fades. A few years later, Oliver became a real star in aviation. His professionalism and charisma attracted the attention of not only passengers but also his colleagues. He became a mentor for young pilots, continuing the tradition established by his teacher Jack. Emily and Nick continued to support their son, but they did not forget about their own lives. Their business flourished, and they decided to create their own charitable foundation to support families going through challenges similar to those they had overcome together. One day, during a family dinner, Oliver announced that he wanted to make his parents part of a new project. "I've been offered the position of director of a new international pilot training program," he said, "and I want you to co-found the school. Mom, your expertise in education, and Dad, your entrepreneurial talent, are what will make this project a success." Emily and Nick were overwhelmed, but happy. It was a chance to bring their family together even more and create something that would leave a mark for generations to come. The school was named Wings of Dreams. It became a symbol of inspiration for young people from all over the world who dreamed of the sky. Emily lectured for flight attendants, Nick was in charge of the financial part, and Oliver was the chief instructor for pilots. The opening of the school was attended by everyone who mattered in their lives, including Jack. He congratulated Oliver on his achievements and wished the school prosperity. "You have a strong team," he said, shaking hands with Nick and Emily. A few years later, Oliver introduced his parents to his fiancée, Anna, who was also a pilot. They planned their life together and dreamed of how their children would one day follow in their footsteps. Emily and Nick were happy that their son had found true happiness. Their family was getting bigger, and their dreams were becoming more attainable. When Oliver and Anna received their first son, they named him James, in honor of the long road Emily and Nick had traveled to build this world of love and support. As Emily held her grandson in her arms, she realized that life had given her everything she could ever want: family, harmony, and the opportunity to make a difference. Their lives were filled with work, joy, and travel. Emily and Nick, now grandparents, continued to enjoy every day as they watched their family grow and become stronger. Their story has become an example of how love, trust, and perseverance can overcome any difficulty. And every time Oliver's plane took off, Emily felt that this was true happiness, to see the wings of a dream spread over generations. Time passed, and little James, who was named after the family's strength and resilience, began to show interest in the sky at an early age. At the age of 5, he was already recognizing the types of airplanes by the sound of their engines and dreaming of becoming a pilot like his father Oliver and mother Anna. Emily and Nick, now wise grandparents, supported their children and grandchildren's every step. They often spent time with James, telling stories about their lives filled with trials, love, and triumphs. "Grandpa, have you ever been on a plane?" James asked one day. Nick smiled. "No, but I helped create all this so that others could fly." "Then you are a hero too," James said seriously, and Nick could not hold back his tears of joy. Wings of Dreams School has gained international fame. Graduates from all over the world were reaching high career heights. Emily was still running special trainings, and Nick was expanding the foundation to support young people who could not afford tuition. Oliver and Anna introduced new technologies into the learning process to make learning more accessible and effective. They also became the face of the school, inspiring students with their own achievements. One day, at the school's 10th anniversary celebration, all the family members gathered together. Jack, now very old, came to pay tribute to his heir apparent, Oliver. "I never thought I would see you build something so great," he told Oliver. "It's not just me. This is the work of my whole family," Oliver replied. Emily listened to their conversation and realized how far they had come together. When James turned 10, he took his first introductory flight with his father. Oliver, sitting next to his son, felt proud and excited to pass on the family tradition to him. "This is just the beginning," Oliver said as James enthusiastically flew the plane under his supervision. Emily and Nick watched the flight from the ground, holding hands. Their hearts were filled with pride as they knew that their family was now part of a great story that continues to live and grow. Emily and Nick, having reached their golden years, decided to pass on the management of their projects to the younger generation. They moved to a small house by the sea, where they could enjoy their memories and shared moments in peace. "We've come a long way," Emily said, looking at the sunset. "And every moment was worth it," Nick replied, hugging her. And so they continued their lives of love, peace and pride in their family, knowing that their legacy would live on in the hearts and dreams of generations to come.